Yes, Rashida Tlaib is going to be on right now. Hold on. I am adding all of them onto the call. Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Annabelle, you're on. Victor, you're on. Rashida is the only person who we do not have on right now. I believe she has muted herself. Can you guys hear me?
Hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you guys and I can see you guys. Rashida Tlaib is not only muted, self-muted, but also it seems her camera is not functioning right now. It's just loading in. It might be best to turn it on and off, the camera, I mean, if you click on the turn off camera button. But yes, for everybody in the chat, we're going to be going to see if doing it on my desktop is better. Okay. We were waiting on Congressperson Rashida Tlaib, but we have a conversation. We have a big conversation lined up and ready to go. We're going to be talking about migrants under the Trump administration and what to do in the upcoming Trump regime and what the next steps forward are. This is something that I obviously care about quite a bit. And yeah, hold on. Let's see. Okay. All right. Rashida's gone for the time being, but she'll be back. But before she gets on here, she's on again. I wanted to welcome you guys, Annabelle Mendoza and Victor Guillen Fabrez. Am I saying that right?
Yep,
that's right.
Okay. If you don't mind, one, welcome to the broadcast. Two, I wanted you guys to introduce yourselves to my community real quick.
Yeah, sure thing. I can kick us off. Thanks for having us, Hassan. My name is Annabelle. I'm the communications director for United We Dream Action, which is a leading immigrant rights organization in this country, powered by immigrant young people, youth of color, and the average voter. And I'll pass it to you, Victor.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? My name is Victor. I serve as communication strategist for United We Dream Action. I'm also an immigrant myself. I came to this country about 8 years ago. So yeah, really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. And how would you describe what United We Dream Action is to people who are uninitiated right off the jump?
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit, a national organization. Again, we are led by immigrant young people. So folks who have DACA, folks who have TPS, folks who are fully undocumented. We're also powered by other young people of color and average voters who are all coming together to fight for racial justice in this country, immigrant justice in this country. We organize, we build independent political power, organizing on and off the streets.
Okay. Let's see. Let's check in with Rashida real quick in the Discord DMs to make sure she's doing all right. But okay. So obviously, this is something that I've talked about quite extensively. It's something that I've been very critical of the Democratic administration as well since last year, which was something that I feel like is very different, very unique to the Democratic Party, at least in accordance with their past performance and the way that they communicate about immigrant rights. Something changed in the political discourse overall, where I think after consistent racialized propaganda towards migrants in general in this country, I think that the Democratic Party also took a somewhat right-wing tone and claimed that immigrants in this country also constitute a national security threat in the way that the Republicans have been saying for quite some time. Now, of course, this is not. This doesn't correspond to reality. There's no data to show that undocumented immigrants are responsible for a large share of the crimes that happen on U.S. soil. As a matter of fact, the only data that is readily available is the exact opposite, that undocumented migrants are responsible for a smaller percentage of crimes than natural-born U.S. citizens are. And I wanted to ask you guys if you have seen in your own communities like this narrative shift, and if this has like how are people feeling about this change in attitude overall?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we work in comms, so we definitely see a narrative shift. And it's kind of hard not to see that shift. And we've seen it gradually take place over the past several years. I think at the end of the day, though, like our community is rooted in our people. We know that there isn't going to be a politician out there who is coming to save us. either side of the aisle. That's not what we've ever been about. And that's why we've been so focused on building independent power that is really rooted in working class communities, rooted in the issues that young people care about. We've heard it time and time again from our communities. Young people care about the issues. We are facing crisis after crisis as a generation. And so for us, it's not about the candidates. It's about, are you really connecting with the issues that matter to young people?
Absolutely. Some of the questions I have are, I mean, what happens next? So the Trump administration has obviously made it a signature part of its legislative agenda that they're going to engage in something that is so unimaginably cruel that I feel like, I mean, it's I've called the policy Hitlerian because I think it is. He has routinely claimed that there are 20 million undocumented migrants, a number that nobody really knows where he got from. I think the original, like the actual latest estimation is around 13 to 15 million. And he has said that he is going to engage in mass deportations for all 20 million undocumented migrants living on U.S. soil. This means that 1 in 15 families that live in a mixed status household is probably going to have their immediate relatives forcibly removed from American society and placed in a concentration camp slated for deportation. This policy not only is uniquely cruel, but it's also obviously going to cripple the economy, considering that undocumented migrants contribute greatly both to our agricultural output, but also our construction industry as well, among many other sectors. But of course, the most significant part about this, I think, is the inhumanity of this policy. Hey, Rashida, you're here.
Thank you. Sorry. Just know that my kids are like, I can't believe, Mom, you can't even get on the. They were like, of course, you're the only one who can't get on. Yeah.
If you don't mind, do you mind flipping your phone so it's landscape, if that's possible? Because it'll automatically adjust.
Yep. Guys are making me feel old.
No, don't worry. I mean, I'm a boomer.
Okay,
I'm 33 in this industry. That's perfect. I'm 33 in this industry. I'm basically dead. So in my line of work, when you're 33 years old, it's over. It's so over. Rashida Tlaib, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a massive fan of yours. I've been a big supporter for quite some time. I've been meaning to have you on the stream for quite a while. So I'm very fortunate that you are gracing our presence here on this broadcast. We are all big time supporters of you, and I'm very grateful, very thankful that that you guys were able to put this together so we could talk about issues that matter to everyone in this community. Can you hear, Rashida? Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I can hear you guys. No, just thank my son Hasan. He's a huge. My son Adam's a huge fan of yours, so he's like, "No, Mom, do it. It's awesome."
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah.
You got a good son.
He's a chatter, so he loves your show. So that's you can give my.
He's got a good head on his shoulders if he's a fan.
Yeah, he's got a lot of strong opinions like you, so that's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, strong opinions are needed. So now that Rashida Tlaib is here as well, I guess the question is, what can Congress do, or are there any plans of action in order to protect undocumented migrants and migrants across the board in the United States of America? And what are some of the perceived threats that the Trump administration has signaled thus far in terms of how they are going to tackle this, what I call non-issue that they consider to be a major issue?
Did you want me to go for it?
Yes, please, Congresswoman.
I mean, so one of the things to know is, I mean, of course, you hear the term mass deportation. Just know this: under, previous administration, when he was there, he was separating families. He was, I mean, you saw the increase actually of private detention centers grow. You can hear sometimes, as a former immigration attorney, we always hear, well, how many number of beds are they increasing in these detention centers? That's always a clue whether or not, again, Democrats and Republicans both alike have done this, Hasan. So it's not just one party or the other. But one of the cruelest things that I think the incoming president did under his administration, under the same names that you hear, Stephen Miller, Homan, all these folks who, even Homan came before our committee and testified, is this idea, let's just take their kids and put them somewhere else when they come across, so then they will never come back. Like, it was awful, because even some of the children were sent from the border to Michigan, and some of which to this day have not been able to reunite with their parents. I just can't imagine. Now they're in foster system. It's just so cruel and inhumane. The other important thing that you should know too is, I mean, so there's a whole process right now. I mean, again, applying to asylum is very much legal. And there's folks that want to undercut it. Even some of my colleagues in my own caucus have been talking about this, right? But at the same time, and United We Dream will tell you this. Look, many of my neighbors have been here for decades. Some of them went to high school with me, and they haven't been able to adjust their status here. I have so many of my neighbors that are actually married to US citizens and can't fix their papers here. No one is talking about the decades and decades of our broken and inhumane system that is leaving so many of my neighbors who work, pay taxes, their kids are going to school with our kids. We're not talking about them. They're so laser focused on the so-called border, not realizing right now there are US citizen families, American, that are literally being separated and torn apart because of our broken immigration system. Or my neighbors, where I grew up in Southwest Detroit, 20 different ethnicities, Hassan. I kid you not. I remember under Obama, I came in, I was a state house member, and I was sitting in the main office of one of my schools, and I was just finishing reading to third graders. And I remember this little girl just crying in the office, and I was like, what's wrong? And then she said she went home and her parents were gone. And the neighbor said it's because ICE picked them up. So this idea around, this idea that something new about removing, again, undocumented parents away from children, American children, that's been happening under previous administrations in the past. And so United We Dream they'll tell you personally, they're experiencing it personally. They are made up of folks that are dreamers, but folks that went to high school with us, are born, pretty much raised here as little young kids that literally have no pathway. But there is the cruelness of it is what I think many of my neighbors in the 12th district in Michigan are really, really fearful of, how cruel it's going to be.
Yeah. One thing to note on the bipartisanship of this issue, or at least like the fact that the Democratic Party has contributed to this, is obviously Thomas Homan, who was appointed to the position under the Obama administration, and Obama even gave him a medal. This is something that a lot of people don't understand and don't realize. But as a congressperson, Rashida, would you say that some of this attitude has actually swung in the Democratic Party in recent years, as opposed to in the past? There was more of a push and pull, like I like to call it. Like Obama would do deportations, but they were border apprehensions. They were still cruel, and they were still inhumane. And yet,
yeah, I mean, I just, let me tell you, under Obama, I remember, and again, this is just to show that this is very much an American issue, no matter who's in power, and how we've just, what is that term? I'm a child of immigrants, so I always get the bucket, you kick the bucket down the road. This idea around, it's their fault, it's their fault. Yeah, it really has been something that I can't believe under every single, I don't care if there's a D or R next to their name, seems to me that they don't really care about fixing the actual immigration system. It's people even that are legally coming in, so-called legally, with process visas, that are also experiencing the same brokenness and humaneness that we see. But Hassan, I remember, me and Obama administration head to head, I remember I was pregnant with my second kid. I was like wobbling around telling him, you are not allowed under federal policy to do any ICE actions near schools. And they did it. And the next day, all the parents, all the school kids didn't show up to school the next day. They're not even allowed to do these kinds of so-called operations and coming into schools and doing these like raids and things like that. Again, that was right in front of two schools in my district at the time. It was horrifying. It was traumatic for the community. No matter what your status was, to watch that happen in front of kids was awful. And I had to go head to head with, a Democratic-led, immigration system being led by the Democrats. And again, know this later on, of course, because even the Dreamers were in the streets demanding action. Remember this.
Yeah.
They were vilified for it, Hassan. I remember they were like, oh my God, leave them, you're making them look bad. No, it was their duty and responsibility to move a president that promised that he would do something about this. And if it wasn't for them, I don't think we would have gotten DACA. if it wasn't for them, again, demanding it in the streets, I don't think we would have gotten DACA. But I want them to talk more about, again, what they're doing. I love the fact that they didn't wait to see who got elected. This group, United We Dream, created this situation room and created this action knowing that no matter who was president, that something was going to, awful come their way. Because again, fear mongering from both sides, both parties was pretty evident.
Yeah, I mean, the Congresswoman was really hyping us up, so I love it. But yeah, we've been organizing around the clock. We know that like our work does not end or begin on election day. It doesn't end with like getting voters to the polls on November 5th. It is a year-round job. And I think the thing is like the terrain we're facing right now with Trump's reelection, it is very real. And I think people sometimes don't believe that these things could happen, like mass deportations or raids. It's already happened. It happened under his first administration. It happened under administrations before Trump. And so it's going to happen again, and it's going to expand. And I think it's very, very real what the Congresswoman is saying in terms of we're going to see agents being deployed into our communities, into our neighborhoods, at schools, at churches, at masjids, at hospitals. We're already seeing that in Texas, right? Texas just passed, right, a law that was signed by Governor Abbott that allows the hospitals, right? They're now like required to ask patients their immigration status. It's all a tactic of fear. That's what it is. And so I think the end of the day, though, there is so much that we can still do to make sure that Trump's plans are not successful. We can still make sure that these spaces are safe spots for our immigrant neighbors.
Yeah.
If I can jump in real quickly, I think like it's important to like also like start from the basics, because there's a lot of people out there that have absolutely no idea what Trump's anti-immigrant agenda actually looks like, right? Like I talk to a lot of people in my community, they have no fucking clue. I think like the first thing that we have to mention is that if you actually go ahead and read Trump's official policy platform, right? I'm not talking about Project 2025. I'm talking about his actual policy platform. They want to explicitly, right, like carry out the largest deportation in the history of the US by invoking something called the Alien Enemies Act, which is a war law, right, that was designed to give the president sweeping powers to racially profile, detain, and deport any non-citizen that they deem to be a threat. What are the standards to deem someone a threat? No one knows. But this is the power that this act gives to the president, right? This is not an exaggeration. We've seen it in the past. It was used in World War II to put immigrant communities in internment camps. And we have seen, like Annabelle was saying, local versions of this in motion already. In Texas, because of SB 4, is a law that deputizes local police agents to become federal immigration agents to do the same thing, racially profile, separate families, attack our communities are in those states. There are many SB 4 copycats everywhere, right? In Arizona with Proposition 314, in Iowa, in Oklahoma. This is the infrastructure that they have been setting up so they can carry out this mass deportation. So the threat is real. This is what we're dealing with. And if I can share one more thing, is that one of the most concerning parts of this program is that they also want to go after the protections that already exist for people like us, right? To name a few, right? TPS, temporary protected status. I've been protected from deportation by TPS for quite some time. Most people in my community have been protected by TPS. This is something that they have explicitly said that they're going after.
Yeah.
DACA, right? 12 years of DACA, protecting immigrant youth, a program that allows people to work, to live, to study without the fear of deportation, humanitarian parole. They want to end birthright citizenship through an executive order under 1. This is stuff that is on their platform. Like, I'm not making any of this stuff up. And at the end, they want us to feel unsafe anywhere we go.
And denaturalization, the abolition of birthright citizenship and denaturalization for those who are commonly known as anchor babies, colloquially known as anchor babies, with mixed status parents. People who are born on U.S. soil. So the question I have, I guess, and this is something that is in the minds of a lot of people as well, is what do you say to people who doubt that Donald Trump is actually going to carry out these mass deportations?
I mean, he said he's going to do it. Everybody always says that. It's so bizarre to me because I know. Look, you guys, I have so many people in my community said, well, we'll see. And I was like, how many times he's he got to say that he's going to do it? But
Yeah.
even when he had, what's scary, Hassan, and we'll see this, is even when he does carry out, people are going to still deny that it's actually happening. I kid you not. I don't know how many times I said, I went to the border. I saw a 4-year-old boy behind a glass door come up to me. My colleagues are right there asking me where his grandfather was because he was separated from them. Oh no, children not being separated. That's not happening. That's what's so scary, is how many people are going to continue to deny that it's actually happening. But he definitely, ran on this issue, and with the recent announcements, one after the other, it's very clear that he's surrounding himself with people that have also been very proudly saying that this needs to happen.
Yeah. Stephen Miller, to name one
That's
key
right.
figure in the architect of Trump's white nativist anti-immigrant agenda. Another another point that I am very frustrated by, and I actually communicated this to Ro Khanna directly, and he was shocked by it, is that so many within even the Democratic Party are completely unaware of the actual facts. One of which I reference regularly is obviously the Texas study that shows that undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens. But outside of that, Donald Trump has regularly engaged in basically blood libel towards migrants, claiming that they are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans year-round. And yet, when you look at the actual data coming from the Customs and Border Patrol and the Department of Homeland Security itself, that this number is actually around 29 in the fiscal year of 2024. So the fact that they are so clearly lying about this, and the fact that like so many Democrats that I think are still guided by empathy to a certain degree have not launched any sort of counter messaging campaign against this is shocking to me. Is there a way to get the rest of the Democrats to caucus around this issue and to potentially push back against these lies, or even is it far too late at this point and we have to get into a defensive stance?
Yeah. It's never too late to speak the truth. I mean, you're right. They may be empathetic, but are they courageous? Are they courageous? Because it takes an incredible amount of commitment to just continue to speak the truth, even as national mainstream media and everybody continues to gaslight people that everything is happening because of our immigrant neighbors. I think people are going to be very shocked. They're going to be very astounded by how many of our neighbors in some of the most beautiful, most diverse, most vibrant communities are actually undocumented. Why? Because again, we're talking about 2 decades of never touching anything around pathway to citizenship, anything in recognizing mixed, status families. They're all over in every corner of our country. I tell my colleagues, I don't know how we became the party that used to talk about that we're a nation of immigrants.
Yeah.
That we're not, there is no Canadian dream or German dream. You heard that saying. It's always been the American dream. And we've been sharing those beautiful stories, not only of dreamers, but of, the person that, came here because they never thought they could ever, have the opportunities that they have here. I mean, Hassan, I remind people, yeah, my parents may have came a certain pathway, but even then they were vilified and targeted. My dad only had 4th grade education and my mother 8th grade education. And now their daughter is a congresswoman. And, sharing those things, inspiring people that's what makes our country so beautiful and so inspiring and so empowering for the whole nation. And I can tell you there's corners of where I grew up in Southwest Detroit, and now I represent this beautiful, vibrant community in Dearborn. I can tell you, if you look at, this is a community that has now thrived not only in the business sector, but just continue to grow and thrive. And I know United We Dream team knows this. You see a lot of the faith leaders like waking up and saying, whoa, that's not who comes and worships at our church. I mean, that's not the people, again, the vilification that continues to happen. I feel like many of my colleagues staying silent don't realize that is action. And to me, that's failure in actually speaking truth. They can absolutely correct, again, the lies and push back against it. Because no matter, again, who's in the White House, if we don't do it, it endangers many of our immigrant neighbors. And again, some of them will never, ever report what's been happening to them. And it has continued again throughout this campaign, from calling many of my immigrant neighbors rapists and criminals and so forth. It is it is awful because it is leading to more violence towards our communities.
Yeah, and if I could just add too, I think what both of you are pointing to is like this fact that like facts right now, when we are speaking the truth, when we are pointing to, the numbers, we can give all the data. And it just doesn't land for some people. And the reason why, and we see it right now with Trump, right? There is a multi-million-dollar infrastructure behind their disinformation campaign. And it's intended to reach the people in our own communities, right? I think even among us, among like young people, we have recognized loved ones who have voted for Trump and been like, what the hell? Right. And it's because the disinformation strategy has reached them. It's a multi-million-dollar tactic meant to sow the division between our communities. And so I think that is also a major threat that United We Dream Action is trying to fight back against, that we're also trying to make sure that young people know what information is right, what information is intended to actually get people riled up based off of just emotion, based off of racism, based off of just their kind of initial reaction. And the bottom line is that disinformation then goes and informs politics, and then it goes and informs policies. And that's how we're seeing the through line into mass deportations and mass raids being something that is getting normalized. And we cannot allow that to get normalized in this country.
So how do you think, to jump off your statement here, how do you think Trump has made successful inroads with Latino men, in particular young Latino men? Do we feel like the Democratic Party is at some point a little bit responsible for almost like purging or pushing aside the younger base of voters, men in general? And how do we reach out to people that have so much to lose from the very same policies that they assume will not harm their immediate family members? Because this is something I've so consistently seen with people that voted for Donald Trump that know undocumented immigrants or have immediate family members that are undocumented immigrants. And they have this assumption that like, oh, it's actually someone else that will get deported and not my immediate family members, because my immediate family members are contributing to, they're contributing to the American economy in meaningful ways. So it won't come after them. And that to me, I think is a clear cut demonstration that they too have fallen victim to this propaganda, that they also believe that there is this crisis of like migrant criminals that are running amok inside of our borders.
Yeah, there are two parts to that question. The first one, like Annabelle mentioned, is targeted disinformation, right? There is a well-funded disinformation machine designed to target young Latino men in particular, right? Where they exist, where they spend time online, right? Places like this, honestly, places like Twitch, Kick, Discord, YouTube, right? And this disinformation is designed to dehumanize the people in our own communities, right? Because when you call your neighbors who have been undocumented for 3 decades criminals, when you call asylum seekers fleeing persecution and violence invaders, what you're doing is effectively dehumanizing an entire group of people that justifies dehumanizing acts on this same group of people. And we've seen it many times in the past. This is just a tactic that populists and demagogues use. And it's no different this time. But I think like the important part here is to recognize that it has to do with our information diets. If you give good people bad information, they will do bad things and they will do like make bad actions, right? I think the second part to this is actually the lack of like good economic message, right? I think a lot of young Latino men who have been radicalized out there, and I talk to my friends all the time about this, right? And a lot of working class Latino families simply don't have the time and the privilege to care deeply about democracy and the civil rights of their neighbors. They're too busy putting food on the table, right? So unfortunately, people don't eat democracy. And so we need a compelling economic messaging to bring these people to our side, because these are people that already have been radicalized online. They're really entrepreneurial. They watch Joe Rogan all the time, right? Like we need to bring a good economic message to them, because we have to tell them, hey, like mass deportations are wrong and inhumane, but they're also fucking stupid, right? Like we will see the effects everywhere because of this mass deportation. They will see it when they go in the neighborhood and they see the local bodega shutting down. They will see when home prices keep going up because there is not enough construction workers to build more housing or enough farm workers to produce more food. They will see when their work sites get raided by ICE. They will see when their local businesses go under because they don't have enough workers and enough local customers because they're all gone because they were deported. They will see when a family member, a friend, someone they love gets deported. So this is the kind of messaging that we need to counteract the disinformation that is targeting our young Latino men.
Absolutely. What you mentioned in terms of the economic impact as well, this is one counter I hear so often, so frequently, is that like there's a cruelty, a purposeful cruelty. I'm of the mindset of Aviva Chomsky on this, that like the standard set for undocumented, or the process of documentation being limited, is a deliberate mechanism to ensure that there's always a group of second-tier laborers that are constantly coming into the country that can be cycled out and discarded when they are demanding back pay or speaking out against like workplace violence and horrid conditions that they're subjected to. And this is precisely what I think the famous case of Purdue, the chicken factory that engaged in this almost human trafficking scheme of undocumented migrants in the United States of America, where they went to areas where they knew there were undocumented migrants, brought them into a trailer park right next to their factory, and when they demanded back pay after years and years of abuse, they called ICE on their own workers. And then, lo and behold, the next day they were back at it again, looking to recruit undocumented migrants to work in that same factory. This is basically, indentured servitude of a different name. And I feel like at the legislative level, there's got to be some sort of real solution to this. But one thing that I always stress is that the real way to solve this problem, which is not like it's a crisis of humanity and not necessarily people doing things that are bad or doing crimes or whatever, but instead is to process all of the undocumented migrants and offer amnesty to all citizens, conditional amnesty in terms of like, sure, like a criminal background check or whatever that Americans would be comfortable with, given the large majority or the overwhelming majority, if not damn near entirety of the undocumented migrant population is not actually, committing any crimes whatsoever. I think that process be fast and expedient and humane. It's also one that is genuinely popular. A lot of people, I think, get lost in the polling. I look at messaging polls all the time. I look at issue polls all the time. And one thing that I've seen so consistently is that people tend to hyper-focus on the top line and never look at the second question that follows it. And it's something as simple as this, like where in almost every single poll conducted on the matter, overwhelmingly, if given two options, mass deportation or mass amnesty, Americans overwhelmingly choose mass amnesty over mass deportation. And even in the polls where they say 60% of Americans want mass deportations, one, many Americans don't even understand what that would look like and how violent that would be and the economic impact of such a thing. But beyond that, those very same Americans also in that same poll show that they favor by the same numbers, if not by larger majorities, mass amnesty or conditional amnesty. So the fact that this, the fact that this is not talked about in that dynamic, that Americans actually are of two different minds and sometimes are completely oblivious to what they are advocating for, I think is really damaging the public discourse when one side is not offering adequate counter messaging out of fears that the other side's message on this issue, that migrants constitute a national security threat, is far too pervasive and persuasive, and therefore there's nothing they can do but become the more moderate version of that same violence. So how do we fix that? That's my question. It's a long-winded one.
I know I'm like older than everybody here. I just do remember though the days that Reagan did like a pathway to citizenship, right? You got and so many families in my community talked about that time of many of the workers, many people that were contributing the way he talked about it, obviously, I wish we just talk about it as human beings and being part of society, but he talked about it as around, they were helping keep the economy going in the United States. And many of our immigrant neighbors still do that, right? But he talked about it in the way to have a pathway to citizenship. Then later on, Clinton didn't like a lot of things he did, but one of the things he did do was offer a pathway for mixed families to be able to have a pathway citizenship. For instance, I worked on as a law student, U.S. citizen, married to an undocumented person or somebody that's visa that expired or, fell out of status, whatever it was, they were able to pay like kind of a fine and be able to, again, adjust their status in the United States than having to leave the country and all these things. But on top of that, though, he added a lot of criminalization provisions that are really creating some struggles for our families. Especially, again, these are many people that are already here, Hassan. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you they are everywhere and they're neighbors and they've been here for decades. And they've been part of our communities for such a long time. And I wish that we just acknowledge that we failed them instead of it looking at the other way, because we do have a country that's like, come on, no, come on, we need you. Why? Because Hassan, every time when I was a state representative, they would offer some sort of criminalization of my immigrant neighbors. I would add a provision saying, how about the person that employed them? And I do that intentionally because I want them to see, like, understand the many folks, and they're all pretending. Like the restaurant owners are pretending. In agriculture, because it was the agricultural community, Hassan, that all of a sudden spoke up and said, no, stop. We do not want employment verification process at in our industry. We don't want any of this. Why? Because they know that again, they're an integral part of our communities. I just know for me, they have enriched our neighborhoods. And I mean this, like in my community, I'm not saying it because I'm a congresswoman. I lived it. I grew up in Southwest Detroit, 20 different ethnicities. They have enriched our neighborhoods and our communities in every aspect. I don't care. It's not just the food and the culture. It's also just the sense of like being grateful. I mean, I saw things through the eyes of my neighbors that I would never been able to see through those that may have been born here. And so I just don't realize why we don't talk about it in a way that I think is much more humane, but also understanding, again, the nation of immigrants. And we've always had an immigration system that did not keep up with the need or the values of our country. And again, we fix it by recognizing stop separation of families, recognize that they're here now and that we need to solve it now. Mass deportation is not the solution. It won't ever be. They tried it. Trust me, they may not have called it that, but they've tried it. They've gone after certain industries and sectors and showed up at workplaces. They've tried it. It didn't work.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Implementing, if there was any sort of like, I guess this is a weird thing to say, but if there was any sort of like real white nativist, like genuine white nativist ideology at play here, beyond the fact that white nativism is a perfect way to keep people undocumented and therefore hyper exploited, then yes, you are right. Business owners that regularly hire undocumented immigrants deliberately in an effort to depress wages and take advantage of their conditions, their immigration status, in an effort to consistently exploit them beyond the normal levels of exploitation of the documented labor force. There would be criminal penalties, and not simply
who benefits the most on a broken immigration system. Like, think about it. I mean, it's absolutely profitable for them.
So how do we start having conversations then with our local elected officials to push for protections for immigrants in their own cities, in their own states? How can people start this? How can people begin this process?
Start off. I mean, I think the Congresswoman can definitely absolutely touch on this too. And I feel like there's tiers to this. I feel like there's tiers to the engagement. And oftentimes, like when we're faced with something so massive, like mass deportations, like all of the horrible things that Trump is promising, I want to acknowledge that there is a sense of like heavy weight and emotion that we feel knowing that a Trump administration is coming. But I also know that like this moment really does call on young people to have the courage to take steps in their own communities to really shore up protections for immigrant communities. We've heard Tom Homan is added to his cabinet. We've heard Stephen Miller is added to his cabinet. We can be blue in the face talking about how horrible these people are, but what are the actions we are actually going to take between now and Trump's inauguration to make sure that we are minimizing the damage and the impact that it will have on our communities? I think one thing is like to the people who are listening, if you're a student, how are you talking to your administration? If you're on college campuses, how are you pushing your administration to make sure that your college grounds are not places where ICE can come on and take students from their classrooms? How are you protecting your immigrant peers? Workplaces, we all work, right? So how are you making sure your work sites are places that protect your colleague who sits right next to you every day at work? We know that those are tangible ways that we can be taking action right now as allies, as directly impacted people. And then, of course, there is pushing your state and local electeds. And that's one of the things that United We Dream Action has been focusing on is we have been trying to push mayors and governors and city council members to be bold and unapologetic right now in not only publicly stating that they are not going to comply with this, but actually doing so through action. And I think you heard the Congresswoman talk about this even in her local district, and so she can probably attest to this even deeper. But that's what I want people to know, is that this isn't the time to like retreat into this sense of despair of like, oh shit, Trump is coming, there's nothing we can do. There is a lot we can do, and that's part of what United We Dream Action is building. It's that independent political home for young people to be engaged, to get connected to each other, and to actually figure out together, here are the avenues that you can take. Here's where we're organizing in the streets. Here's where we're pushing our members of Congress, and to actually find those opportunities to be a part of those solutions.
If I could add something very quickly to what Annabelle just shared, is that, you know, when institutions fail us, we turn to community, we turn to organizers. And I think, you know, one of the main reasons why we're even here today is because we need you. We need allies. We need people who will fight for us and will keep us safe in the communities where we exist, right? Like, we want you all to show up for your coworker, your classmate, your significant other, your family, your neighbor, who will be directly impacted by this stuff. And with allyship comes the power to keep ourselves protected, to fight back, to push back, because none of this is set in stone. We have the responsibility and the power to fight back. And this is why we are doing what we're doing. That's why we have intervened some of these spaces like Twitch, like Kick, like Discord, because we're trying to reach out to people that usually are not involved with us, people like young Latino men, young men in general, so they understand what's on the line and they understand they have power to protect their own communities.
Yeah, and I, just so you all know, I come from the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit. And I can tell you what they taught me, many of my neighbors, I call them, you don't grow up with one mother, you grow up with all the community mothers. And one of the things I've learned early on is we're the only ones can liberate ourselves from oppression and from cruelty from our own government. And the way we do it is we organize, we outwork the hate and all those things. But listen, look at the history. We didn't get the Civil Rights Act because Congress woke up and said, wow, that's a really great idea. No, it's not. We didn't get the right to organize unions and finally have human dignity in the workplace because President of the United States woke up one day and said, wow, I think that's a really important so that people cannot die in the workplace. It was because people withheld their labor, they boycotted, they stood up, they did civil disobedience, they marched, they activated in their communities, and people from all over, it's like a coalition of people came together. But when we do this and stand up and, you know, I know I'm going to be on mama bear on steroids in my community, not on my watch. Will I let one of my neighbors even be, don't touch him. Go work on the fact that we have a country with the most inhumane, cruel immigration system. Focus on the fact that we need to fix it. But we got to also start saying this. We need a fair, humane immigration system. We don't say it enough like we used to. We need it to have a pathway to a citizenship. Like, wake up. The way they have it now, it is like very obvious that they're picking and choosing who they think should become Americans. When, you know, again, many of our communities, we can talk over and over again about the beautiful immigrant stories of our grandparents, our parents that came here. if we allow this to happen, I think we're going to start seeing, the most, I think, already racialized, but most, cruel, and probably things that folks, Americans, are going to look back and say, whoa, when did that happen? How did that happen? So that's why I think Abigail's right. You've got to talk about this. When I explain to people how children whose parents got deported are in the foster care system and they never got to see their parents again, and this is not exaggeration, look it up. It's mind-boggling. They rather pay to put the kids in foster care, Hassan, than actually focus and work on getting an immigration system that works. Is that the kind of country? Like, I mean, get me a break. Why can't anybody just speak up and say, no, that's not how we're going to move forward in this? And so I agree we have to do this. I know this. Last time there was a threat, I think in 2016, one of the things is our local communities, local city council, our mayors, you can now see some governors standing up and saying, we are not going to let you touch one of our neighbors. You're not going to do it on our watch. And so I think, know that on the federal level, we may not see the kind of courage and really values that we all have. And like you said, Hassan, the poll after poll, but by the way, polling, it's all over the place based on what they're asking. But I can tell you this, the majority of Americans do not want to see children being ripped from the arms of their parents. They don't want to see us allowing federal dollars to be used for private detention centers and private companies making money off of, again, more of a cruel and inhumane immigration system. And so there's so much that we can do, but I agree, talking to people as much as possible. Last time, again, this feeling came about, it was the first time I saw many of my undocumented neighbors speak up and say, did you know I'm undocumented, in spaces where it was really hard to get up and say it. And I think people at block clubs and other places were like, what? I didn't know. And when you realize some of the most closest people around you, places that you might go, a restaurant, anywhere, you're going to run into somebody again. But for the broken immigration system, they're not able to adjust their status or be able to have a pathway to citizenship.
Absolutely. I think one way to communicate this in terms of like our restrictive border policies is how it directly contributes to the cartel economy. Both on the side of mass availability of guns that is protected constitutionally, that creates a trade route for cartels that specifically want to bring in drugs into the United States of America in exchange for weapons that they bring back into Mexico, a country that does not have a lot of or any legal guns, as a matter of fact. And besides that, I think it creates a black market. These restrictive immigration policies, like most people would be taking the legal route, the safe route, if that was afforded to them. And yet, because it is so restrictive, that many people then end up taking these illegal black market routes that only benefit the cartel in general. I feel like that's one way to communicate this issue to people that might be resistant to seeing the, I guess, humanity of immigrants, which is crazy to even talk about. But that is the unfortunate reality. There's plenty of people who just don't see it or don't get it.
Yeah, and it's not just so you know, it's not, many of our immigrant neighbors that maybe have roots in Central or South America. Just to be clear, after 2016, we have a huge Chaldean community in southeastern Michigan, and he filed deportations of thousands. I think it was over 1,000 or so. And these are many folks of those community that originally had voted for and supported widely, very publicly supported, electing him in 2016. No hesitation, nothing. Just these folks have been here. I think they were here since the 1980s, had families here, roots here, strong roots. Again, it was just a complete, everyone got notice of deportation. I just say that because I always think people are only thinking of my neighbors from like Mexico or Honduras or Guatemala. I'm telling you, for me, it's from people all over, people that may have come on a student visa, Hassan, and overstayed, or coming from other areas, especially war-stricken areas where they just can't go back. I have a lot of folks that are still stuck in an asylum cases from East Africa and some other locations. So it's important to me for folks to understand it's so many other ethnicities and backgrounds that are going to be impacted by this. I didn't
Yeah.
know you had a dog.
Oh yeah, this is
I'm a little
she's
big
she's
dog.
my puppy.
Oh,
Being bad right now though. She's dropping her bone. Very loud. What are you looking at?
I gotta show you a picture of my baby.
Yeah, mine's hanging out in the bed, sleeping.
Oh, that's my girl. That's
I-
my
Oh
top.
wow. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's a good dog.
What's her name?
Tots.
Tots. Oh my God, I have a Tots. She's sleeping back here.
That's crazy.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's
See,
all good. It's good
children
to
of immigrants and immigrants are, look, we love dogs. We're just
Yeah.
human beings.
it's
lovable.
good to have a little break from the
Yes.
man-made horrors beyond human comprehension every now and then, and I think that that's also important. Is something I've explained to my community quite a bit since the election results came out, which was that you know, you have certain things that you have control over in your own life. You know, for me, it's working out. So that's why I urge people to, you know, maintain their hobbies and go out and organize in their communities and participate in their communities in meaningful ways, whether it be like joining an intramural league or something, or having a shared interest with a bunch of other people. And that's still very important, I think, more important than ever at this time, especially when we are so isolated from one another, so alienated from our labor, but also, you know, find ourselves in these echo chambers online that might lead us astray, and it causes us to forget our common humanity. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that I might have missed that I didn't get to that you want to say before I let you guys
just
go?
you're listening and you're fearful of what's coming. I just want you to know, trust in your community. We've risen up before and we got your back. And like, I just think of my friend Sergio and so many others right now thinking, I'm done. I just can't live like this anymore. When are they going to finally, you know, give us DACA? Remember, especially, you know, he's been here since he was 5 years old. I think of him and I think, but we got you. Like, I know it's hard to live in the shadows and hard to live in this tremendous amount of fear, but I have confidence in our communities will rise up. I saw it before and I know it'll be stronger, and we're going to do as much as we can to protect people, at the same time make sure that they're not dehumanized and targeted and feeling isolated. Like, I love you guys. Like, you belong here and you are loved and you are welcomed. The people that want to talk and target you, I promise it's because they have nothing else to fucking do. They don't know what to do with the economy. They don't know why, because they're taking money from the corporations and the same companies and others that want the broken immigration system. Just know we're going to continue to speak that truth. It's not just United We Dream. There's so many other organizations out there ready to fight back and speak the truth and, you know, get that pathway, I think, for a more humane immigration system in our country, one that recognizes you have been our neighbors for a very, very long time.
All right.
That and say that, like, really quickly, Hassan, thank you for engaging in such an important conversation. And I'll say this just from the perspective of like Gen Z right now. I think a lot of Gen Zers are retreating into a sense of isolation. We've been kind of isolated, feeling isolated politically, feeling isolated, maybe not represented by different political parties, or just feeling like the state of the world is really a crisis right now. And one, I want to acknowledge those feelings are very valid. I have felt those feelings myself. But I also think that the power of places like United We Dream Action, the reason why myself and people like Victor have been drawn to this organization, is because we bring people out of isolation and we bring them into community. We know that when you are alone and you are in a corner, that is not where we take the steps forward to create change. We do it together. We do it in community. We do it in the rooms and in the streets when we know that the bad actors out there who are trying to come after us are creating entire schemes to hurt our people. We are the ones putting in the work around the clock. And so that's what I would say to anybody here who is like, I don't know what to do. There's one step you can do. Join an organization like United We Dream Action. Join your local organizations in your communities. Get organized now, because it's not going to happen on your own. It has to happen in community. That is where the work happens. That is where the change happens. And really what we're about is building that independent power that represents us, that represents the working class communities, the Black, brown, immigrant, queer, young people who are ready to shake things the fuck up, ready to change things in this country. So I think that that's where we need to really encourage people to find your home. United We Dream is one of those places, and there's so many, like Rashida Tlaib was saying, there's so many out there that are your space, that are ready to welcome you.
All right,
I would just add
absolutely.
very quickly, like we'll share with you all like resources to know your rights, resources to help your neighbor, resources to join the squad, which is our super powerful organizing team at United Dream Action. This is the time to take action. This is the time to fight for your neighbor. This is the time to show up in solidarity with the people most affected by this crazy stuff. And big shout out to Congresswoman Tlaib for being here with us. Big shout out to Hassan as well for opening the space and centering the conversation around the directly impacted people that will feel the pain, but also the hope of having people around them for what's coming next.
And thank you guys so much for coming on. And once again, to everybody in the chat and to you guys as well, don't get discouraged by seeing liberals talking about how they're going to report their Trump supporting neighbors as undocumented, immediate undocumented family members to ICE. I feel like that cruelty is unimaginable. I feel like that is, I mean, there's, at that point, you are not even remotely distinct from a Trump supporter. You are literally doing that exact same thing. So this is an issue that transcends beyond party. This is widespread cruelty, inhumanity, and we will fight back against it every step of the way. So thank you guys so much for coming on. And of course, free Palestine as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hassan. We really appreciate it.
All right. Bye, guys. All right. That was a wonderful and very informative conversation. I hope you guys appreciated that. I think that it was needed in times like this when, people feel discouraged. People feel a sense of discontent, understandably. And, you just have to, once again, remember that there are people out there that are doing the work. There are people that, and you can be one of those people. People ask all the time, like, what can you do? It's just, remember, if you're a documented American citizen, like, you have a lot of rights. You can, just in the same way that we see Israeli citizens go to the West Bank and actually participate in the protest to put their bodies in front of settlers that are doing terrorism and violence. You as an American citizen can do something similar as well. Okay? Not many is going to do that, but I think, if you're courageous enough, you should be able to do so as well.